Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Buck. Here. Senator Daly. Here. Senator Hammond. Senator Lang. Here. Senator Pazina. Present. Senator Scheibel. Senator Stone. Here. Chair Spearman.
Here. And just before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. Please make sure your phones are turned off or on mute so that they don't accidentally go off during any of the hearings. By now, everyone knows that there are several ways that you can participate here in Carson City and Las Vegas at Grant Sawyer Building. You can also submit written comment or share your opinion via the legislative website. When you speak, please put the microphone as close to your mouth as you can and project your voice, because several people will be listening to us over the internet. And if you don't speak clearly and project your voice, they are not going to be able to hear you. A reminder to all who testify that pursuant to Nevada Revised Statutes 218E.085, it is unlawful for any person to knowingly misrepresent facts when testifying before a legislative committee. And anyone who does so is guilty of a misdemeanor. Either I or any member of the committee can ask you for documentation supporting your testimony. And with that, I think we will get started. Committee members, we'll take pictures at the end, so everybody will be here. And let me just say also, we are running down to the wire, and I'm going to ask you, and if you are testifying or presenting a bill in this committee between now and Tuesday, please ask the folks who come up. If somebody has already said what you want to say, please just say ditto, because we have so many people that don't get a chance to even say their name in the record because you have 6 or 7 people who come up and say the same thing. So please be courteous and say ditto. We're going to have to limit testimonies to, responses, public testimonies to 2 minutes because we have to. We've got first House passage on Tuesday. And again, as I say to everyone, we are under these constraints because we are an antiquated legislative system that only meets every other year. And if we met every year, we would be able to do a lot of this in the succeeding year. Hopefully at some point in time, we will leave the dinosaurs and we will come into at least the Stone Age with Fred and Barney. So with that, I'm going to call forth Assemblywoman Hadeghi presenting Assembly Bill 107. The measure revises provisions governing certain pharmacies outside the state. So Assemblywoman Hadeghi, begin when you're ready.
I'm going to say ditto to your introduction. I agree with all of that. So, good morning, Chair and members of the Commerce and Labor Committee. I'm Assemblywoman Sandra Hadeghi, and I proudly represent Assembly District 41. I'm here today to introduce Assembly Bill 107. After having had conversations with Mr. Young earlier last year and learning about the history and the reasons why this bill would allow for increased pharmaceutical care for Nevadans, I was happy to submit this bill on behalf of the Assembly Commerce and Labor Committee. This policy will allow Nevadans increased access to care and access to prescriptions that keep them healthy. Not being an expert in the area, I do have Mr. Paul Young here with me representing PCMA to walk the committee through the bill and help answer any questions you might have. Madam Chair, with your permission, I would like to hand it over to Mr. Paul Young to finish the testimony. I leave you in very capable hands, and with your permission, if it's okay to excuse myself to Ways and Means, they need me to make a quorum.
Yes, please do so. I may have some bills there, so. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Paul Young with Tom Clark Solutions, representing Pharmaceutical Care Management Association. So how AB 107 came about was in August of 2021. There's an interpretation with the Board of Pharmacy regarding out-of-state pharmacists. And this only has to do with out-of-state pharmacists. And that is that every pharmacist would have to be licensed that came in contact, touched a drug, what have you, that ended up doing a mail order or getting to a Nevada citizen. And so with that, we got together with the Board of Pharmacy, the pharmacists, my client, the pharmacy benefit managers, and we came up with this language. And it's really in Section 4, Sub 4, and it says that a managing pharmacist at one of these facilities has to be licensed in Nevada. And we think that's the cleanest, that's, for a public safety aspect, from a regulatory aspect, that's the safest, cleanest way to do this, to keep the prescriptions continuing and not, holding up any kind of supply chain issues or anything like that, but still having the safety regards in consideration. So with that, that's the bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Senator Pacina?
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much. Assemblywoman Marzola and I actually received communication from a constituent in regards to this same situation. So just to confirm, if there were someone not necessarily needing a prescription from a hospital, but just from a local pharmacist who came in with a annual prescription that needed to be filled and they were in the state of Nevada, would that pharmacist from a plan that's not an existing plan in Nevada be able to get their prescription with this bill?
Paul Young, for the record, that's a good question. And I'm pretty sure it is, but I do have a phone a friend in the room, if I could.
And this is your lifeline.
This is one of them. I get two more.
Dave Weiss, Executive Director of the Board of Pharmacy, for the record. Can you just restate the question? Sorry.
Absolutely, and thank you, phone a friend. The question is, if someone were spending, let's say, as many do, half of the year as a snowbird in southern Nevada, and their healthcare company were based in another state, not in the state, and they needed to pick up a prescription, oftentimes now those individuals have to pay up front for a year's worth of prescriptions before coming to the state because they can't be given to them by a pharmacist here in the state out of another health plan. So with this particular legislation, would someone coming in with an out-of-state health plan be able to use a pharmacist here in the state to pick up their prescription that's been prescribed by a doctor?
Dave Weiss, for the record. It's an excellent question. It works in reverse of that. So this would not solve that particular problem, but that's something we can look at in the future. But it would allow a pharmacist out of state to service somebody from Nevada.
Knowing how much work has gone into this in the Assembly, is it something that the sponsors on Assembly Commerce and Labor, the people who've been really spearheading this bill, would be willing to look at potentially an amendment that would help with this issue?
Yeah, Paul Young, for the record, yes, I'm always willing to work with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions, committee? I would be disappointed if you didn't. Senator Stone.
I never want to disappoint the chair. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Common sense bill. Just so if it's a out-of-state facility, I assume that the pharmacist would have to be dual licensed in the state that they're working in, as well as being co-licensed in the state of Nevada.
Paul Young, yes, they should be licensed within the state they're in as well. Yes.
Okay. So if a pharmacist is being disciplined in the other state, is there collaboration between the Nevada State Board of Pharmacy, and is there appropriate notice being given to the pharmacy that their lifeline to Nevada could be cut off? In other words, we don't want any abrupt changes that cuts off, pharmaceuticals coming into Nevada because somebody got themselves in trouble in another state. Is there that collaboration and some kind of a backup system that would ensure that the traffic of pharmaceuticals would continue to flow into Nevada?
Good morning, Senator
Morning.
Stone. A work in progress. We are trying to work on all kinds of different portability, and I know that's an issue that you're interested in. Yeah. We always notify, we don't have that many, but we've had some, so we always notify the resident Board of Pharmacy. Whether they do something or with it would be their rules, but this still would be able to safely take care of people that were bad actors if we needed to.
And thank you, sir, for being here. It's great working with you in the little time that we've known each other, but I assume that the state boards of pharmacy are readily in communication with one another.
Dave Weiss, for the record, yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you for your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hammond.
Good morning, Madam Paul, and sorry about my tardiness, Madam Chair. Quick question about the bill, though. I was talking earlier with you, and something that keeps coming to mind is we're seeing more and more where an industry will create a factory somewhere and then produce something and send it somewhere else. We see that with eyeglasses. We see it with your service. I've never heard of anything like this needing to be done in another state where somebody had to be licensed in another state, can you point to anything that says, hey, this is it's sort of, there's a precedence for it, and it's sort of the standard now where we're going to be licensing folks outside of a state because they're going to be receiving goods and services from the state of Nevada or any other state? Do we do that here? Do we license folks here from out of state?
Dave Weiss for the record. There are other states that do exactly, we're following the model of other states, but we can get you the list of the states after the meeting. if
Thank
want
you.
that. Yep, no problem.
Additional questions? Thank you. Any other presenters? No? Okay. All right, with that, if you step back, and we'll open it up now for public testimony. All those testifying in support of Assembly Bill 107. I'm going to do that a couple other times too, okay? Anyone in Las Vegas? Don't see anyone coming to the table. If there's anyone here in Carson City, there are 2 empty seats. Don't see them, so you're flying solo.
Good morning, Chair Spearman and members of the committee. Thank you for hearing this bill. This is something that I've been involved in the entire time. Once the ruling came out from the Board of Pharmacy that every pharmacist outside the state of Nevada that touched a prescription in Nevada would have to be licensed in the state of Nevada. That had a potential to impede patients in Nevada being able to get their medication. So this bill addresses that. I thank you for hearing that, and in an effort to just keep this real short, I appreciate the committee hearing this, and I appreciate your question, Senator Panzina.
Thank you. BPS, anyone on the phones in support?
If you would like to testify in support of AB 107, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll move now to those in opposition. Anyone here in Carson City? Don't see anyone down south. Don't see anyone moving to the table in Carson City. BPS, anyone on the lines for opposition?
If you would like to testify in opposition to AB 107, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. We'll move now to those in neutral. Anyone here in Carson City? Neutral. Don't see anyone down south. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Barry Cole, B-A-R-R-Y-C-O-L-E. The one word that comes to my mind is why. The reason I ask why is a hospital has to have a pharmacist. So if it's coming from an out-of-state bulk supplier to a local hospital, there'll be a hospital pharmacist. Why? And that person in Nevada would be registered as a Nevada pharmacist. Why would they need to be registered from Ohio? Same thing with correctional facilities. My understanding is there is actually like a pharmacist for our correctional facilities. So if this is going to be such an important piece of legislation, should it apply to all pharmacy services? And I would ask Dr. Stone, my colleague is a pharmacist, why does this not make sense to a physician? Just my comment.
BPS, anyone on the phones?
If you would like to testify in opposition to AB 107, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you. Sponsors, any closing remarks? Okay, with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 107 and open the hearing on Assembly Bill 236, sponsored by Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno, but I think she's in the same meeting as Assemblywoman Hadigi. The measure revises provisions governing the practice of psychology. Welcome, Ms. Laxalt. Begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nina Laxalt, today representing the Nevada State Board of Psychological Examiners. I do want to thank the sponsor, Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. and she is in Ways and Means right now. And Chair, thank you so much for hearing this bill. So this is a small, uncomplicated bill. It's only 2 pages, as you can see.
Please don't say that, you jinx
I
it.
know, it's always a curse. Essentially, what this does is it ceases the use of the term psychology with the corrections, Department of Corrections. Right now, the Department of Corrections have 3 job titles: psychologist 1, 2, 3, and 4. Essentially, we've been working with the Department of Corrections for about 1.5 years on this bill, and so I believe they're okay with it. We haven't heard any negativity. I'm not sure they take a position one way or the other. But what this bill does is restricts the use of the title of psychologist to individuals who have received training, education, and licensure to engage in the practice of psychology as defined in 641.025. The aim of the bill is to eliminate exceptions in this bill that potentially create confusion in Nevada. And in order to save some time, I want to introduce as well Dr. Whitney Owens, who is the president of the Nevada State Psychological Board, for further explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laxalt, and thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Dr. Whitney Owens. As Ms. Laxalt mentioned, I'm the president of the Board of Psychological Examiners. We've been working on this particular language since around 2019, when we had some folks from the Department of Corrections approach our board asking about the use of the title of psychologist in the Department of Corrections. The practice of psychology is a highly educated and highly skilled practice that can have significant impact on vulnerable patients who are treated and evaluated by psychologists, and especially in the Department of Corrections, which is a exceptionally vulnerable population. There's currently a national movement to ensure that incarcerated individuals have a clear understanding of who is providing them with psychological assessment of care. The goal is to ensure that inmates' rights are upheld by distinguishing licensed psychologists from non-psychologists. So as Ms. Laxalt mentioned, there are 4 positions in the Department of Corrections that currently hold the title of psychologist, and only one of them is required to have a doctoral degree as required for licensure as a psychologist. So our goal is really to eliminate those titles, and like Ms. Laxalt mentioned, we are working with the Department of Human Resource Management as well as the Department of Corrections since 2021. Everything has been completely amenable. We're actually in the process of working with DERM to change those titles to corrections counselor so that inmates are not confused about who's treating them. So rather than thinking that they're being treated by a psychologist when they're not, they'll be receiving treatment by someone who isn't called a psychologist. So it's really to clean up language that's been around since the late 1970s, and to make sure that when someone's being treated by a psychologist, they know that they're being treated by a psychologist, and when they're not being treated by a psychologist, they don't believe that they're being treated by a psychologist. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Question, Senator Seibel?
Thank you so much. I think this makes perfect sense, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding, especially in the Department of Corrections context. I completely agree that we don't want to be holding out people without the extensive education of a psychologist as a psychologist. And I think you had mentioned calling some of them correctional counselors. Was that the word? And so
Yes.
So is the idea to have one term that covers everybody, or still to distinguish between, for example, a licensed clinical social worker or a marriage and family therapist who might be employed in these settings to provide counseling services to incarcerated people?
Dr. Whitney Owens, for the record, that's an excellent question. And yes, so the state titles are different than the licensure. So in the state system, they would be called corrections counselors. But if they are a licensed clinical social worker or a licensed psychologist or a licensed marriage and family therapist, they would also be able to identify themselves that way. So really, it's more about a classification in the state system that uses particular titles. But if they had the licensure for a particular title, they would be able to use both.
Thank you. That completely clarified my question, and it just led me to a new question, which is this position, which we currently call a psychologist, that we're going to be changing to a correctional counselor. What are the requirements for qualification for that position?
So there are currently four different classifications: psychologist 1, psychologist 2, psychologist 3, psychologist 4. And I believe that psychologist 4 requires a doctoral degree in psychology. The other three levels can require anywhere from a bachelor's degree to a master's degree. And those could be in social work, they could be in marriage and family therapy, they could be in counseling, not necessarily psychology. And those folks currently in the system are called psychologists.
I understand now. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions, committee? Okay. You want to step back and we'll open up public testimony in support? Anyone here in Carson City in support of Assembly Bill 236? BPS, anyone on the phones?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. So we'll move now to opposition. Anyone here in Carson City? Don't see anyone in Las Vegas. Opposition? No one's moving to the table. So BPS, anyone on the phone lines?
You would like to testify in opposition to AB 236, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. Let's move now to those in neutral.
You would like to testify in neutral to AB 236, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. Any closing remarks? Okay, thank you. So we'll now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 236 and open the hearing on Assembly Bill 110. I think Ms. Susan Fisher presenting. The measure makes revisions governing the dispensing and delivery of certain dialysate drugs and devices used to perform dialysis. Please begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'm Elaine Marzola, representing Assembly District 21. This bill pertains to the delivery of home dialysis supplies and devices to end-stage renal disease patients in Nevada. There are 700 ESRD patients in Nevada that dialyze at home. To conduct their dialysis at home, these patients need a continual delivery to their home of various dialysis drugs, supplies, and devices. Currently in Nevada, the State Board of Pharmacy is now requiring a pharmacy that only distributes dialysis supplies and solutions to comply with the same requirements as retail pharmacies such as Walgreens or CVS that handle controlled substances, compound, and dispense medications with varying safety profiles. Since the manufacturers of home dialysis supplies and devices offer a limited product portfolio and follows all of the United States Food and Drug Administration requirements, additional retail pharmacy mandates are burdensome to the operations. This bill would amend the Pharmacy Practice Act to allow manufacturers of home dialysis drugs, supplies, and devices to be exempted from the pharmacy licensure if they maintain control of all products from manufacturing to patients. This bill will still require the central pharmacy to maintain any additional licenses, such as a wholesale license. This bill was amended also to clarify the definition of dialysate drug. With me today, Chair, and with your permission, I can have Susan Fisher with McDonald Carano walk you through the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I very much appreciate Chair Marzola agreeing to bring this bill forward for us. Susan Fisher with McDonald Carano speaking today on behalf of Baxter Health, a pharmaceutical company. They're based in Illinois, and they have they produce the ESRD, end-stage renal disease dialysate drugs, which are non-dangerous drugs. We did have a friendly amendment on the Assembly side requesting us to add language to make certain that it was non-dangerous drugs. So these are just electrolytes, fluids, and sugars. So there's nothing dangerous because these people are typically doing self-administering in their own homes. They can be administered in a clinic setting, but these shipments go directly to their homes from a warehouse in Dixon, California. And so this bill will just allow the company to continue to operate the way it's been operating for the past 10 years without having a pharmacist standing in the warehouse in California taking these prepackaged and pre-labeled boxes and then sending them out. And the boxes typically weigh anywhere, the packages between 500 and 1,000 pounds. So this is a great convenience for, as Chair Marzola said, 700 patients here in Nevada alone. So in the bill, one of the main functions here, I mentioned that the friendly amendment is in section 1.6A, and that was added to make it abundantly clear that the prescriptions we were talking about are not dangerous drugs. So a dangerous drug would be something that would have, I've got to look this up because I'm not a pharmacist, would have heparin, insulin, drugs like that, and it's something that would not be allowed to do outside of a clinical setting. So the main thing that Section 1 does, it just talks about them being able to do this, self-administer, and it can be done in a facility or it can be done at home. There is, in Section 3, Sub 5, and Sub 3, this just says that they can be dispensed directly to them. And there really isn't a lot else in the bill that is much worth talking about. It just makes it very simple. So there are 34 other states that do allow this. 24 states exempt it so that a pharmacist does not have to be required in the warehouse. 8 states have special language, so no pharmacist is required as well. But there is a pharmacist examining and labeling the packages at the production site. And this language mirrors the Model Pharmacy Act from the Board of Pharmacy. I would be happy to try to answer any questions for you.
Thank you. Committee, questions? No, Senator Daley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think it's a fairly easy question. Just wanted to, so you say there's somebody at the warehouse when it's packaged, wherever that might be, and then it's going to go directly. So a prescription is written by somebody, to give them this machine. Pharmacists don't typically dispense machines, I don't think, but nevertheless. And then it comes with the electrolytes or the other controlled substances and various things. And then that gets shipped to wherever directly through a warehouse or through a manufacturer to the patient. And that's what we're covering now, or trying to do that we're not allowed to do now.
Susan Fisher, for the record, that's exactly right, Senator. We have been doing this. The Baxter Pharmaceuticals has been operating in this manner for the past 10 years. They've been licensed in Nevada for over a decade. But in recent review of statutes, the Board of Pharmacy said, we know you've been operating this way, but we think the statute says that you need to have a pharmacist at the warehouse, and that they had never required that before. And so they actually suggested that we get a bill to provide some language to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions? Any other presenters? Is it? Okay. If you'll step back, and we'll open up public comment now in support. Anyone in support of Assembly Bill 110? Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Jessica Ferrato here today on behalf of Fresenius Medical Care in support of AB 110 and the amendments proposed in the Assembly. Fresenius Medical Care provides care for thousands of Nevadans who rely on life-sustaining dialysis treatments in the state. Patients who need dialysis have the option to receive treatment in their own home rather than at an outpatient dialysis center. Choosing home dialysis can mean greater scheduling flexibility, fewer food restrictions, and has shown strong outcomes. Home dialysis treatment can also be done longer and more frequently, so it gets gentler on the body, meaning patients feel better and have an improved quality of life. Patients who qualify for home dialysis go through a rigorous training program, which includes a home assessment and meetings with the patient's entire dialysis care team. Once on home dialysis, patients continue regular check-in meetings with their care team at least once per month, support through a clinic, and 24/7 access to assistance should they experience issues at home. Depending on the type of home dialysis they are receiving, there are different drugs and medical devices that need to be regularly delivered to their home. AB 110 removes time-consuming and burdensome processes to continue easing the home dialysis treatment practice for patients. A patient's treatment decisions will remain between them and the clinic, working closely with their nephrologist. The doctor will send the order to Fresenius' licensed pharmacy in Illinois and send the order to Nevada via a licensed wholesaler. Licensed pharmacists and pharmacy technicians process all the prescription orders at the Illinois pharmacy and seal the package for delivery. AB 110 removes the need for licensed pharmacists to be at the warehouse when the package arrives in Nevada and remove the need for products to go through a clinic or pharmacy. Package will be delivered to patients as they were sealed at the licensed pharmacy. We appreciate your consideration. And Chair, if you don't mind, to Senator Daly's question, the nephrologist, the practicing kidney doctor for all patients, prescribes an individual prescription per patient. Each combination of dialyzer is very specific per patient, and that is done via the physician. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Spearman, members of the committee. My name is Jimmy Lau with Ferrari Reader Public Affairs representing DaVita, and I'll keep it short and say that we echo the comments of our colleagues from Fresenius and thank the sponsor for bringing forward this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see anyone down south. BPS, is there anyone on the phone lines in support?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. We'll move now to testimony in opposition. See anyone moving here, down south? BPS, anyone on the phones?
Hi, good morning. For the record, this is Adam Forrest with the Nevada Society of Health System Pharmacists. I'm actually testifying in support of this bill. Appreciate the sponsor working with us for the amendment on the Assembly side, and we are supportive as amended.
Thank you.
Public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. So we will move now to those in neutral. Anyone here in neutral? BPS, anyone on the phone lines in neutral?
If you would like to testify in neutral for AB 110, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you. Sponsors? Okay, no closing comments? Okay, so we will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 110, and we'll open it up now for public comment. Public comment, anyone here? Don't see anyone down south. BPS, anyone on the phones for public comment?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you. Want to give a real good thank you to our committee manager and our policy analysts for helping us get a schedule that gets us out of here at a decent time. So thank you all for doing that, and we'll be right back here again on Friday at 8 o'clock to hear some more assembly bills. I'm going to say that and I'll get it, okay? So with that, we are adjourned.